myself in the chat box. As we are approaching 5:30, we will actually start the webinar shortly. For the benefit of those who are actually joining the series for the first time, this webinar series is under the SIP United Cares initiative hosted by Social Innovation Park. We are a not-for-profit social enterprise with the vision to co-build a more inclusive, sustainable, and mindful world. As we are waiting for more participants to join, my colleague has actually shared the link for the feedback form in the chat box below. You can feel free to download the chat box, download the feedback, and fill in the feedback form at the end of the session. Also, as you have seen, we have actually muted you as you join the webinar. What you can do is that towards the end, we actually have a Q&A session. Please feel free to switch off your video and unmute your microphones during the Q&A session. We'd love to get to know all of you better and to have a good engagement. Yeah. So to start off, Sandhya, could you flash the slides, please? Yes, so this is the link that you can actually connect with us on our social media platforms, as well as to fill in the feedback form at the end of the session. As shared earlier, SIP, we are a not-for-profit social enterprise with the vision to co-build a more inclusive, sustainable, and mindful world. Under the SIP United Cares initiative, we are offering a series of free 45-minute webinar sessions covering topics related to how people, businesses, and communities can strive and stand united amid COVID-19. The series is anchored on the science of mindfulness and will provide participants with useful tips to mindful living amid the crisis. In today's session, we're actually be covering the topic of effective online communication and its importance as we adapt to the new normal. As we start to spend most of our time at home, we have actually adopted many digital tools such as Zoom, Google Meet, video conferencing to actually stay connected with our loved ones, friends, colleagues, and even our fitness instructor. Just last week, I actually had 7 calls within a day. So how many calls are you actually having a day? Let's actually do a quick poll to find out.
We are having 4 or 5 on a daily basis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. On Zoom, basically.
Okay, so we have just launched the poll. Feel free to actually include your inputs, just to share how many times you're using video conferencing a day. I'm sure there's at least one since you're on this webinar today. Yes. Thank you for sharing. We'll now end the poll. Well, I see that most people, 1 to 2 times, we have mostly actually 1 to 2 times. I guess this is the one of the 2 times then, 3 to 5 times. Wow, that's great. Today, I think it will be a very important webinar as Michelle share more tips on actually how to use such communication platforms effectively. Personally, I'm actually very excited for today's content as very relatable to all of us as we get used to the new normal of working from home. With that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Ms. Michell Sheya Wong, who will actually be diving deeper into the importance of effective online communication amidst the new normal and tips on how to engage your audience better. Ms. Michell Sheya Wong is actually Singapore's 2019 champion for public speaking and has coached many professionals in various industries on how to speak more powerfully. She's also a mindfulness practitioner of 10 years. Without further ado, I'll hand the time to Michelle. Michelle, please.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to see all of you here, and it's so good to be able to spend a little bit of time with you. My name is Michelle, and I'm going to touch on what to be mindful of when we're doing online communication. And by online communication, I mean, mainly speaking, video conferencing. After all, this is the new norm for many of us, the new mode of communication instead of face-to-face meetings. So I'd like to request you to type in the chat box below what you use these online video conferencing tools for. It could be for team meetings, it could be weekly check-in meetings with your boss, or it could be webinars, coaching, trainings, town hall meetings, you name it, type it in now, please. For some people, especially when it comes to religious gatherings too, like church services, etc., they're also turning to Zoom quite a bit. Thank you, Atul. Thank you, Enya. Weekly meetings and discussions, webinar learning. Yeah. For some of you, if you also conduct trainings, you can also put that down. Trainings, so Jennifer conducts trainings, team meetings for Peter, team meetings for Kwa, workshops for Anne, Workout. Nice. I haven't tried that one out yet, Peter. For prayer as well. Yes. So thank you very much for your responses. So there are many, many uses of these online video tools. And so what is it that we've got to be mindful of in order to be more effective, be it as a communicator or perhaps as a participant? Let us start off with 3 key ideas. And the 3 key ideas would be the context, the purpose, and the audience. Or you can think of it as CAP, context, audience, purpose. So what the context is would be, of course, is it actual, how do you set the context or the rules of the meeting? That's one. But the context or the rules for this meeting or a culture for this meeting room has to do with the purpose and the audience. For instance, how many of you hold small team check-in meetings regularly? Please type 1 in the chat box. Small team meetings regularly. The majority of you, yeah? Is it? Anya, Peter, Hayati, a number of you. So when it comes to small team, thank you. Yes, Yunxuan. Yes. So when it comes to small group meetings, do you turn on your cam or do you keep it off? Those who turn on your cam, please type 2. Those who turn on your cam, please type 2. Oh, good job. Yes. Anya, Tu, Kwa, Yuti, Lingfang, and Peter. Depends on the occasion. I wonder what occasion it is, Peter. We'll talk about the occasions, yeah. So how many of you have colleagues who never turn on their video cams? Never. So you always just see a name or you just see a picture. Please type 3. I would type 3. I have that quite a bit. Oh, so few of you? That's nice. That's really nice then. Well, the thing is this, why am I talking about turning on or off the video cam? The point is, when we have our video cameras on, what's going to happen? You're going to have better engagement. Better engagement from whose perspective? Well, from the case of not just the participants, but also from the trainer or the speaker or the host. In other words, it's easier when I'm able to see your faces. It's easier for me to tell whether what I'm saying is actually landing or not. So that's the thing that we're losing when it comes to online communication, because when it's face-to-face, it's easy for you to try to read the body language, the way they look, or whether they're looking away or not. But for online communication, it's a little bit tougher, isn't it? So having their cameras on would help for the trainer or for the speaker or host. As for participants, usually when you have your cameras off, you would be really tempted to look away, to not be focused, and it's easy for you to lose attention. So it'll help if you have the camera on and then you stay focused and you know that you're also getting used to seeing yourself as well as others online. So the thing is, whether it's for company meetings, whether we're working from home for a very long time or not, it'll be important if you can make it one of your best practices to turn on your webcam. Get used to seeing yourself online. Only when you're able to see yourself as well as others online and be able to communicate naturally would you be a better communicator. Another important point I would like to talk about will be bandwidth. All right, this is just a side note because it also, when you have cameras on, it really also depends on the number of people, number of participants in a meeting. Usually, if we have 10 or more, it might affect the bandwidth. So for instance, if I'm moving my hands a lot like that, you might not be able to see it very well, but that is because it affects the bandwidth. And that is to say that if there's lots of video streaming, then each video will take up some bandwidth. And so there'll be a certain lag in the video or even lagging in sound. And those would actually affect the quality of the meeting, of course. So if you want to have everyone's videos on, for instance, you might want to consider the number of people. You can have that if it were fewer people. That's one thing. All right. And then some people might say, oh, but how about etiquette? What is the etiquette for it? Should I have my camera on or off? If you have a person who is speaking for an extended period of time, say for 15 minutes or more, it might be good for you to turn off your camera. Why is that? Because sometimes it might be a little bit distracting. For instance, you're there while the speaker is speaking, and then maybe the other participants have all of the entire row on top or perhaps on the side, and then you're there, you're fidgeting a little bit, and it might be distracting to them. So that's one little thing that you can consider. So that's the situation, depending on the situation. If someone's speaking for an extended time, then perhaps to minimize the distractions, you can turn it off. Yeah. And when do we turn it off? When do we turn it on? When there are fewer people and when there's engagement or maybe like question and answer, it'll be good if you can see everyone's faces. So then if I were to have my camera on, then there are other things that you've got to be mindful of. And what is it? Number one, the camera angle. I've seen many people who use the laptop computer and it is placed somehow kind of lower down at the table. So what happens is that you see lots of folds in the neck when you see their video. So because they're talking down like that, so you see lots of folds or even like double chin, like Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars. Or if not, it also feels as if the person is looking down at you, which isn't too good. You don't want people to feel like you're looking down at them and talking down at them. So you want to adjust your camera so that it is at least eye level. If it isn't eye level, it can also be slightly higher up. So of course, it all depends on whether or not you're using a laptop or a desktop. Usually, I would prefer using a desktop because the positioning of the camera is easier. And of course, you can also attach a webcam to it. Yeah, so that is the positioning of the camera. And now lighting. Oftentimes, especially with this new norm, many people just say, oh, as long as I just find a spot and turn on my camera and that's it. But there are other considerations such as lighting. Now, let me show you. Right now, I actually have two lights aimed at my face. Let me show you how it's like when I turn it off. This is one light turned off. Now there's the other light turned off. Can you see the difference? Yes? Let me show it to you again, okay? So these are the extra lights. I also have my room light on, by the way. So once again, one light on. You can tell straight away, isn't it? And then the other light. So the other light actually reduces the shadow because I have two lights on two sides. So if it's on two sides, then the other side without the light will have a shadow. So the other light is just to balance it out. Of course, it depends on the effect that you want to create. Let me show it to you once again. So this and this. Can you tell the difference? Yeah. So without the lights, my face actually looks pretty orangey. And that is because my room lights are yellow. So you've got to consider all of these different things. And you may ask, oh, why would that be important? I'm just seeing my colleagues. Who cares whether my face is bright or not? But it is, if you want to communicate well to people, you also want to put your best face forward. So if you want to put your best face forward, you make sure that people can see you well and that you look good, isn't it? Not only that, you want to ensure that where you're seated, you don't have very strong backlight. Because if you have a very strong backlight, what's going to happen? I'm sure you've seen some of those videos before, isn't it? It'll affect the camera contrast. So oftentimes you might see the person in full shadow as a result. So you can't see the face entirely, it's just all black. And again, that's not something you want to subject your friends, colleagues, potential clients to. So take note, camera positioning, lighting, where you're seated. All right. And now one other thing would be the background. So many people would say that, this is just temporary. I'll just find a spot at home and do what I need to do. But the background is important because whatever's in the background might end up distracting your audience. Oftentimes when I watch Channel News Asia, they have different types of background. And I think recently they have backgrounds with a bookshelf. So what I find myself doing is I'd be trying to read the titles of the books at the back. I'm like, I wonder what books they have there. And that's an added distraction that you don't want your clients or your colleagues to be thinking of, isn't it? So try to ensure that you have a plain background. Plain background is always best, or perhaps one that is at least pretty neat. Sure. What we have over here is a background that's created. So you can also create a picture and include it as a virtual background. For the moment, I think only Zoom and I believe Microsoft Teams, these two platforms allow you the option of having a virtual background like this one you see. I think some of the others don't offer you the virtual background. Then you'll have to choose a nice plain background or a nice plain wall. Okay, so for the virtual backgrounds, another thing you might want to think of would be its colors, its design, etc. I would suggest that you choose a background that isn't overly colorful because it might hurt the eyes, or it doesn't feel good on the eyes if you keep staring at a person with very bright colors behind. So that's one thing. And you can also experiment with different types. Over here, let me show you some examples of virtual backgrounds that I play with. One of them is this one. So this is a very dark background and you may not feel very used to it, but you'll notice that the effect is that the speaker stands out pretty clearly, isn't it? So this standing out effect, if that is what you want to help your audience focus on you, this could be a good way to go. So experiment with different types of background. I have another one that's like this. This would be, for instance, if you're doing shows, if you're hosting an event, things like that, it can create that kind of effect. As for other types of backgrounds, of course, there are those that are funny or not. Well, it's up to you whether you want to use it depending on the context, the audience, and the purpose. So this is one. Do you guys remember this meme? So this is a very famous meme, and this would be, oh, just for laughs, but not really for any serious meetings. If you're seeing clients, that's obvious. So there we go, different types of virtual backgrounds. So experiment with it, especially if you're using Zoom or if you're using Microsoft Teams. Yep. Now, let us talk about engagement. Why is engagement such an important thing? Because that is the one thing that is difficult to attain. That is the one thing that we lose when we're doing online meetings. When it's face-to-face meetings, you can look directly at one another, you can ask questions, you can solicit responses very, very quickly. But when it comes to online meeting, again, it is easy for people to switch off. So what should you do? Ask questions, ask lots of it. And not only should you be asking questions, what kinds of questions should you be asking? Well, questions such as, have you ever been in a situation? How many of you? But you don't merely just ask questions. You should also ask for responses. How did I do it just now? By asking you to key in your responses in the chat. For big groups like these, of course, using the chat is the most efficient. But when it's smaller group, feel free to have them have their videos on and even their microphones on so that they can speak. Yeah. Speaking of microphones, how many of you have issues with a microphone? It could be, for instance, that maybe when you're speaking or maybe you're interviewed, on TV or some program, and then in the background, there's a dog barking, a cat meowing, a child crying. Do you have problems with background sounds, anyone? Type in 1 if you do. Type in 1 if you do. Yes, Ling Fang. Thank you, Kwa. Yeah, if you have neighbors with dogs barking or even somebody who walked past and was talking loudly, no issue with background sounds at all? Good. That's good. That's awesome. Of course, it also depends on the setup, how you set up, where you set up. If you're really lucky and you have a special room to work in, of course, that might not be that big of an issue. But if you do, I'm going to type this app down. The name of this app, it is called Crisp. Yeah, it's Crisp AI, actually. You can look it up. So what Crisp does is that it is an application that makes use of artificial intelligence to help cancel background noises. So I've heard people talking about how, while I'm on the Zoom meeting, but I'm also typing something on my keyboard, can my audience hear me typing on my keyboard? Or sometimes you've got to chat someone and it's kind of annoying, isn't it, if you hear somebody typing in the background. So if you have the Crisp application on, you won't be able to hear it at all. Is that clear? So that is using the Crisp app, downloading it to any of your desktop or your Mac. That would really help, I would say. But you must also try it out before you use it on a different platform. For instance, I've tried this one out on another online platform called Remo, and it doesn't work so well. So give it a shot, try it, test things out. The most important thing about technology is that you have got to spend time to test it out. Okay, so that is about the sound. Now, and also another thing would be, most of us would be using the microphones on our computer. You may want to consider investing in a condenser mic, for instance. So let me show you the difference, okay? Right now, I'm using a condenser mic. So listen to my voice, the quality of my voice. And in a moment, I'll be switching it off and I'll be speaking, and listen to that again. Now, I'm using the microphone on my desktop computer. I hope you can hear the difference in terms of the sound quality. If you can hear the difference in the sound quality, you can type in 2 in the chat. If you don't, you can type in 1. Thank you very much. And now I've switched back to my condenser mic. So for anyone who's speaking professionally, especially for those who have got to conduct webinars or coaching or training, I think this is a very important investment. And there are also many people who would like to create content, who want to start building up an online presence, because with the situation, having an online presence is crucial. So investing in all of these different things would be important. So I've talked about the visuals, and the visuals would be the camera angle, the virtual background. I've talked about the sound. I've talked about having the camera on, etc. Now, and then I'm talking about engagement. So ensure that you engage your audience as much as you can, be it typing in, be it asking somebody, like pointing out, oh, can so-and-so, share with us something. That would be really useful to keep your audience focused and excited about what's working, okay? And that would be most of the points that I want you to take note of when it comes to the essential bits that you've got to be mindful of for good, effective video conferencing. So there's a lot of talk about adjusting to the new norm, and we forget that we can choose to create our new norm. And the new norm that we choose to create should be one that is better than everyone else. Don't you think so? The fact is, the market has changed. Perceptions have changed. The playing field has been leveled. So now is the chance for you to create a new norm that is way better than all of your competitors. How do you do that? By ensuring that you're able to have really effective online communication and being mindful of all of these different aspects. And with that, I can go on to the Q&A. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question, and you can unmute your mic and ask me a question. If not, you can also type the question directly in the chat box. You can have questions regarding anything, be it how to go about engaging more effectively, how to better build an online presence, things like that, if you're interested.
Thank you, Michelle, for the informative sharing. We will now open up the floor for Q&A. Please feel free to unmute yourself to ask the question. You can also switch on your video so that we can have better engagement now as well.
Yeah, Ms. Ling, there's one question. How about recording the session?
What about recording the session? What is your question?
Yeah, suppose I think that I'll not be able to make it to the meeting. So I can put the camera and mic on an auto mode and record the meetings and can visit at my own convenience.
You can do
Am I
that.
able to explain it?
You can you want to have somebody help you record a particular meeting.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But usually,
Yes.
Ling Fang, why don't you share with them what we're doing right now with the recordings?
Yeah, so usually for webinars hosts, they will actually record the webinars from the whole site, and we will typically share the recordings after the session, so that even if participants you cannot participate in the active live webinar itself, you can actually view the recorded version. Do check in with the organizer as to whether they record the sessions or not. Alternatively, if you want to actually record your own screen, I will also suggest to also check in with the organizer first.
Okay, thank you.
Now that I see a couple of videos on, right, I would really urge as many of you as possible to turn on your video cams and really to check your camera angles. Yeah, so check your camera angles and see if it's really optimal. And you can also ask me, is this okay? And
rather you can give the response, how is my camera positioned?
What do you think? Can you see yourself?
No, about you people can see myself.
Yeah, but can you see yourself?
No.
You can't see yourself?
No.
Your video is not on?
It's on? Maybe I have to go to because my screen is positioned on you right now.
Oh, okay. So what we can do, okay, how about this? Yeah. Ling Fang, can you not spotlight my video?
Okay.
Atul?
No, I cannot see myself.
You cannot see yourself?
No.
Okay. Well, your camera angle right now is such that half of your face is missing, just to let you know. So in other words, it's tilted too high up. So you got to lower it a little bit. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Now this works very well.
Great. Thank you.
Your background is pretty clean and plain, so there aren't any distractions behind, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
And
any other suggestions from your side? Because we are the learners.
So we can also poll the audience so they can see you and they can suggest to you, for instance.
Yeah, the audience can give a better response.
Yeah. Right now, I think your angle is good. And
we also have a question in the chat itself from Anne. Anne, do you want to unmute yourself to ask the question?
Oh, yes, Michelle.
Hi, Anne.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
Is it advisable to have a timeout during an online session? And if yes, what is the interval that is advisable?
It depends on how long your session is and what is, again, I talked about context, audience, purpose, isn't it? So it also depends on with whom you're meeting and for what purpose. So usually when I'm conducting webinars, for instance, and like coaching. So coaching, you may be able to push it up higher because the engagement is more personal. But when you're doing it in a large group, then it might be better if you have a short break in between. So the short break can be like a very short one, 15 minutes. Why? Because everyone's home, right? So you don't need to walk a really long distance to go to the bathroom, to go to the kitchen, to get a drink and things like that. It helps. It's also healthy for the trainer or the speaker, because from my experience, I found that I've got really bad migraines from too much online meetings, really, because I find that you notice that I'm looking at the camera. Do you notice that I'm looking at the camera? Yes. So it takes quite a bit of focus to be looking at the camera in order to do that. And as a result, you need some breaks. You need breaks to look away. Because can you imagine how it's like if I'm talking to you and I'm looking around, I'm not looking at the camera, you will lose your audience straight away. So in order to ensure maximum engagement, you've got to have shorter sessions, and you've also got to ensure that you are really looking at them. If you find it hard to be looking at the spot throughout a whole an hour and a half or things like that, maybe what you can do is that you can also just like in between when you're engaging them, asking them to chat, you can look down. Those are little ways to get around having to stare at one thing for too long. Or you can also ensure that when you're making an important point, look. Not so important, you can relax and look a bit at the audience. So yes, intervals would be good. Shorter times would be good.
How much interval you suggest? How much interval you suggest after every hour?
It depends on how long the whole meeting. If it is a day-long webinar, then you'll break it up the way you normally do for a face-to-face kind. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Say after every hour, 10 minutes?
Pardon?
After every hour or 90 minutes, we can take 10 minutes?
It depends again on the size of the group. If it is a bigger group, you might need to, you might have to do it after an hour and a half max.
Okay.
Yeah. But you've got
Thank you.
you've also got to
Decide.
try it out yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Yuko.
Yeah, I see that in the chat itself. We have a question from Yuko.
Where are you, Yuko?
Would you like to unmute yourself to ask the question? Okay.
Hi, sorry, because I'm on the way outside. I'm pretty much like in the car right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask if it's possible, if it's okay if I just don't show the video for now, because
No
I
problem.
think the background
Sure.
distracting. So I just wanted to ask because for virtual workshops itself, usually there to get participants engaged and fully really active in participating and responding, other than just getting them to do something physically, a lot of times rewards and incentives work. So how does that happen for virtual workshops? What kind of options of rewards and incentives that can you suggest in this sense?
So thank you so much for the question. Some rewards that we give out at webinars and group kinds of coaching would be ebooks. So we may have certain ebooks that would give out, and they would say, oh, if you do this and that, we will share the link to this, we'll share this, and then we'll talk a little bit about those. So it could be sharing ebooks. So whatever it is that you're giving, it'll be electronic. And sometimes we would offer electronic ribbons, the most participative speaker, and then there's a ribbon that we post up, or they get to show it, or they get to take a picture of it, something like that. So whatever it is, it'll still have to be converted as something that is electronic. I understand where you're coming from, because at any workshops we'll be giving out chocolates and things like that, and sometimes asking them to turn around to the person, high five. And so all of those physical things cannot be done. But you can also ask them, oh, okay, for a short break. The short break, like what Anne asked and what Atul asked, it's not necessarily that they just get out of the seats and they go to the bathroom. It can also be a couple of minutes, just say, okay, everyone, turn on your cameras, and then I want to see you pat yourself on the back, or stretch a little bit, something like that. Or you can just ask them to please stand and then just stretch. So it depends on the context. Of course, in a formal client meeting, you can't do that. So it depends. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, and just one more, if considering that virtual meetings would need much more engagement than physical meetings, so when would it be more advisable to have either webinar or meetings, or because on for Zoom there's different kinds of options. There's webinar, there's Zoom, there's meetings, there's audio conferences. So which one would you suggest for what kind of occasions?
So what is an example of an occasion that you might face?
So for example, if you're delivering a very informative workshop, and you just need to deliver information to your audience, but you want to make sure that they are engaged and they are listening to it. So there is a need for the engagement, but there's no need for the interaction.
Okay.
So
So there are many different options. So for webinar, of course, it will be more suitable for when you're making presentations. And there's another technique, and that is you can video record yourself and play the video there and then. And the video can be short, so it shouldn't be very, very long and protracted. How long should the video be? It should be about roughly, at the very most, 5 minutes. So you can break up whatever presentation it is that you want to convey to your audience, say 5 minutes. And after that, you can get them engaged by asking questions or talking to them or having them type something. So that's one way to record, play a very short video, and then engage live. That's one way. Of course, most people will choose to speak for that 5 minutes and then after that engage. That's also something that can be done. Does it make sense?
So split up the whole interaction so that it doesn't, so split up the whole thing so it doesn't bore the audience too.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Yuko.
Got it.
How to engage Oilian? Oilian, you want to unmute your mic?
Okay.
Yes. You want to ask the question so everyone can hear it?
Oh, all right. How to engage or do a sales closing during online presentation?
So
say just now you quoted us if you do a sales presentation and then give a ribbon, but for us we what other way?
okay,
Or can
now
they sign up online?
when you talk about closing a sales, I'm presuming that you are thinking in terms of the payment. Is that what you're saying?
Even though if it is not payment, but at least they make a commitment by registration.
Then you can do what we did before, which is just putting a form online for them to click in and straight away register.
Okay,
there are
got
also other platforms that would allow you to be linked to PayPal and other platforms, payment platforms. So there's Stripe, there is PayPal that can link them straight to that. So you've got to find ways whereby you want to reduce the number of steps between the payment and your meeting now. And the most obvious is, click in the chat and go straight there.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Eileen. So again, notice that when you ask a question, we requested you to turn on your videos, turn on the microphone, because we've got to get used to speaking online. When we're used to hearing our own voices and seeing ourselves, only then can we become more natural in our communications, and only then can we be more effective. Next question.
Yeah. In the chat, I see that Atu have a question. Atu, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yes. My question is that suppose in an emergency or if my topic of interest is over during the meeting, what does the etiquette says before leaving?
Thank you,
Should
Atu.
we inform on the chat or just leave it? I mean, what the formality says.
Again, it depends on the context, audience of this meeting. If you are in a company meeting, and then you might want to inform the one who's hosting it. Yeah. If
Suppose
you are
a sales training meeting is there.
If you want to inform the trainer, you can do that too.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
So
Thank
if it were to be a big seminar with like a big webinar with like 100 people, then it'll be kind of strange for you to put it, in the chat where everybody sees it. But if you want to, it is also fine, because chat with everyone, if they actually allow it, it's okay for you to do so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Peter.
Yeah. In the interest of time, we'll have Peter ask the last question. Peter, you may want to unmute yourself and ask the last question.
Yes, hello. So wanted to see if you guys had any advice. So I guess the nature of my work, I have to have a lot of calls with people back in the US and Europe. So time zones are always kind of like a bit crazy. So sometimes I'll have like a call at like 2 a.m. and, in the middle of my dinner, all that sort of stuff. So what do you guys have in terms of recommendations to maintain a better balance and also effectively communicate towards other people? Like I feel like I always take the short end of the stick and like take the odd hours. I don't know if you guys have similar experience.
Anyone in the audience would like to share, especially those who have lots of calls overseas? For me, I would say that I really have to learn to be a little bit more mindful with the use of my time. So when this first started out, basically, I just found myself having meetings later and later and later. And in the end, I felt like I was burned out really at the start. And so you've got to take note of what are the times that is an absolute no-no, and just make it a point to let them know that this is protected time. But of course, understanding the difference, different time zones and the limitations of their schedules as well. Once in a while, we'll still have to give and take a little bit, but ensure that you have protected time. That's one. And the other thing is ensure that you have breaks. Again, from my own experience, I had thought that, I don't have to travel, so I can pack in more meetings in a day. And so I have back-to-back meetings, and I didn't have any break. I even forgot to go to the bathroom until at the end of the day, I'm like, I really have to go. I really have to go. So really it is about being mindful of yourself, your own personal needs, and your time. That's for me, really. Anybody else would like to share with Peter? Yes, please. Please feel free to unmute your mic.
Hi, this is Jyotirmay. From my side, we are in international business of shipping. So Peter, I am really afraid that this type of job which you and I do, probably you are also something similar. It's very unfortunate that we have to take those calls, even if it is at middle of the 2 o'clock in the middle of the night or 4 o'clock early morning. We just cannot avoid saying that, sorry, I'm not going to take that call, because that may be so important that not taking that call could be much more damaging. So unfortunately, after some time, when you come to my age, you'll get used to it.
Thank you so much, Jyotirmay. So basically, it is about age. We've got to age into it.
Experience, you know.
Thank you.
That's what they say, you know. I had seen long back in one poster, which had a guy who was with torn shirt and all black and blue eyes lying down on the floor. And then there was one guy whistling out, taking a girl away. And it says down below in a shattered word, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Peter, you got that?
So you're all collecting experience. You know?
Can you type this thing? Can you type this thing?
Yeah, I can. I can share it with all you guys, you know. But then I can't do the graphics because it was the experience was written in all shattered ways, you know, to show how the guy was on the floor.
Yeah, there are definitely times whereby you cannot say no. And when you cannot say no, then you've got to find other ways to give yourself some kind of a break. So right now, basically, I try my best to ensure that I have at least 15 minutes break in between. And of course, it actually makes my day longer, but I get less tired, like less eye strain, really.
Yeah, I mean, typically, like for example, last night I had to take a pretty late one. So then this morning I told myself, well, I don't have to start my day until 11 o'clock. I'll just sleep in. So I don't know if that's like still considered healthy or not, because I also just feel like super lazy if I do that, but I feel like I need it anyways. So
if you need it, do it.
Maybe experience as well. So I think in terms of taking, odd hour calls, as Michelle pointed out, being mindful. Sometimes it's just, a simple ask, right? So, if you're taking at 12 midnight, it's setting parameters and boundaries to say, oh, I can only do it every Monday. Or, in alternative week, can we set it to be a bit earlier, say 10 o'clock? People feel obliged to sort of reciprocate because it's not a one-way street that, it's always fitting to the other person's timing. But I feel like sometimes a simple tank full ask to say that, could we switch it a bit earlier? Most of the time it works for me because they seem understanding that it cannot just always be a late time for you, sometimes a give and take. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone, actually.
Yeah,
thanks so much,
everyone for
Peishan.
your sharing.
That was awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks everyone for your active questions today. I myself recently have also started doing webinars and meetings in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., 5 a.m. Recently, Social Innovation Park, where I actually have started participating in this global alliance by X Prize, fighting COVID-19, along with many other organizations that's global. So, you can check out their website for more information as well. With that, we have also started working random hours, weird hours. But I think that instead of thinking that, it's actually making us burn out, I realized that it's actually a good learning experience for myself, as I actually get more opportunities to participate in more international platforms like this. With that, we actually come to the end of the Q&A session. In this webinar series itself, we want to encourage everyone to actually care and share for yourself and the people around you. So typically, for those who have actually participated in our webinar sessions before, we usually close off the session with actually a 5-minute self-compassion pause. For those who have not switched on your videos, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage you to switch on your videos so that we can get to see your faces, we can get to know you a little bit better. Then we can also participate in this activity together as a community. Yeah, maybe we could, have everyone switch on their videos, if convenient, of course. to actually switch on your videos and just show your faces. Yeah. So SIP self-compassion pause is actually an effort to help build compassion towards yourself and the people around us. So this supports SIP's vision to co-create a more inclusive, sustainable, and mindful world together, especially during unprecedented times right now. So how can we start the self-compassion pause? Firstly, gently place your hand over your heart. Feel the gentle pressure and warmth of your hand. Let us observe a moment of silence to invite compassion towards the speaker today, to thank her for taking time today to share the valuable knowledge with us. Recognize each other and acknowledge our efforts of coming together as a community. Thank you for joining us today. We would like to actually use this to actually show compassion, seek blessings for our loved ones and COVID workers for their unyielding support and efforts these trying times. To end off, we'd also like to have an activity together as a group. We'll actually do this using sign language. So how it works is that the sentence actually goes, we are in it together. So how do you sign that? We'll start with we, when you go in a circle. We are in it together. The second sentence goes, we will get through this together. So we will get through this together. Okay, let's do it one more time. We are in it together. We will get through it together. Wow, I see that everyone is actively participating. Thank you so much for your active participation today. Do also join us for our next webinar session on Thursday, where Michelle will be sharing more about mindfulness and relationships. For those who have not registered, feel free to register for the session itself. Do also follow us on our social media platforms for the latest updates. At the end of it, as we want to actually also give you guys better content and get your feedback, we'll actually also share the feedback form link here. Please actually help us to complete the feedback form and let us know how was the session today. Thank you everybody for your active participation. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks everyone.
Thank you all.